Hello and welcome to another standard video here in the preview event for Tarkir Dragonstorm. Today we're checking out this white, blue and red or jeskai colored tokens deck, which is a bit of a departure from the previous token builds that you might have seen. We now introduce 4 copies of Voice of Victory, a 2-mana 1/3 with Mobilize 2, so when the voice attacks we get to make a pair of 1/1 warrior tokens that are also tapped and attacking, and we sacrifice them end of turn. And then while we control the voice, our opponents also cannot cast spells during our turn, so especially against counter spells or maybe instant speed removal, that can be a huge upside. And then curving Voice of Victory into Warleader's Call is kind of the dream for this deck, giving our creatures +1/+1, and whenever a creature enters under our control, we get to deal 1 damage to each opponent. So now we could be attacking with 6 power, as well as pinging the opponent for 2 just from the warrior tokens entering the battlefield. So that's why we're now making room for Warleader's Call, whereas it maybe didn't make the cut in previous builds. Another reason is that we're also decreasing the creature count in this deck, and we're no longer playing a Knight Errant, which we would usually convoke to find additional threats, and instead we now have cards like Frontline Rush, which is a bit more flexible than the Resolute Reinforcements, since not only can we make a pair of 1/1 tokens, but we can also use it as a pump spell to maybe get past larger blockers, and can also use it to maybe close out the game by just pumping up 1 unblocked creature. And then the Stadium Headliner is another new addition, another Mobilize creature, and then can also sacrifice it for 1 and a red at any point to deal damage equal to the number of creatures we control to target creature. So having that flexibility of being a threat that also plays well with our token theme, while also being a removal spell, is incredibly important, since usually these token decks don't have a lot of room for interaction. So now we have 4 copies of the Headliner, as well as the full set of Case of the Gateway Express, which can also be solved pretty easily in this deck by attacking with 3 creatures, and when it enters deals damage to an opposing creature equal to the number of creatures we control. So it's quite similar to the Headliner, and that gives us 8 of these removal spells total. And then of course we're still playing the Gleeful Demolition package, which is the most efficient way of going wide in Standard. By destroying our own artifact we can make 3 1/1 goblin tokens, and then the reason to splash blue in this deck as opposed to maybe black for some of the other Mobilize cards is that we have that additional consistency of Spyglass Siren making an artifact for Gleeful Demolition, alongside Novice Inspector making a clue that can also be sacrificed later in the game for 2 mana to draw a card, and then Nesting Bot, an artifact creature that leaves a servo behind when it gets destroyed, so that can also give us an extra target for Gleeful Demolition, meaning 12 1-drops total to enable our demolition, which is pretty important, otherwise we might be a little bit short on enabling it. And then another reason to dip into blue is for Narset Jeskai Waymaster, which kind of replaces the Knight Errant as our source of card advantage in this deck, as we can pretty quickly empty out our hand, and then if we maybe cast Narset alongside another 1-drop, we get to end of turn discard our hand, which is probably empty, and then draw 2, and then we can just keep repeating that over and over, casting lots of cheap spells, and then replenishing our hand turn after turn. And then the mana base consists of fast lands and pain lands, since we want to avoid tapped lands in the early turns, since it's all about curving out in a deck like this. And then, yeah, that's the blue version. Could also experiment with the Mardu version, maybe playing Zurgo for additional Mobilize synergies, but then we'll miss out on the Gleeful Demolition perhaps. So yeah, that's our deck. Now let's jump into some games and see how the deck does. Okay, we're on the draw. We have a reasonable hand, I would say, with Nesting Bots being a target for demolition. Although we'll probably want to start with the Headliner. And then next turn we can Bot plus Demolition, setting up the case. Alright, Beast Caller does potentially get in the way, so then I don't have a great attack anymore. I'll just have to wait until next turn. And then just using the ability can also take something out. So this turn, Inspector plus Case. They get to move the counter, so there's no real difference between taking out the 2/2. And then I just want to solve the case, don't want to lose the headliner. And then next turn we have a few options. Could remove a creature, could get Narset going. For now Surak can give itself haste, but is forced to play defense. And yeah, Narset plus Nesting Bot is a pretty efficient turn. Do we still want to attack? Or I could just use the headliner, take out Surak. I think we take it slow and build up our board a little bit more. We are taking some damage from our pain lanes. And then draw 2 cards after discarding our hand, which was empty. And a War Leader's Call's looking good. Rush also gives us a trick to attack past larger blockers. As we see Trailblazer into another Beast Caller. No attacks. So this turn we could attack, use Headliner, take out, let's say, a Trailblazer here. Although Trailblazer we can attack into, so I should probably go for Surak, and then I can frontline rush somewhere else. Narset probably doesn't want to attack. Yeah, something along these lines. So trigger Mobilize, take out Surak. And then we can still rush. Maybe just going all out and pumping an unblocked creature was the play, since we're giving +7 here. Currently I'm getting in for 10, +7, I guess it would be lethal. Alright, sweet. On to the next one. Okay, we're on the play. One lander without a red is going to be difficult to keep. As tempting as it may be. Alright, this I can try. Bottom Siren, and then Voice into War Leader's Call is pretty strong. Facing red-green. We'll have to see if we want to play a second Voice first, especially if we draw a 1-drop. As our opponent plays a Bramble Familiar. Narset, missing blue. So the upside of playing Voice is that we could deal more damage on the following turn. Also maybe set up the case, although it's not going to be solved yet. Yeah, still don't hate playing a Voice here. Can start by attacking. Maybe they respect a pump spell. War Leader's Call would have been more mana efficient in case we draw an untapped land so we can double 2-drop. But a lot of the lanes are fast lanes which would enter tapped. Opponent now keeps ramping with a Dragon Storm. So yeah, they could have some powerful board wipes. But now War Leader's Call represents a ton of extra damage. 4 from the tokens entering, and then 6 more from pumping our creatures. So that's essentially 10 damage for 3 mana. Opponent falls to 2. So yeah, that's the real strength of Voice alongside War Leader's Call in this deck. Just need to turn one of them sideways to burn them out. This draw could have been even more powerful with a 1-drop. Alright, let's see if our opponent can hit something powerful off Dragonstorm. Well, they sure did, although luckily this scales with number of lands in play. So it only deals 5 damage, so it can only take out 1 voice. So then the second one should still cross the finish line. But yeah, still a pretty nice hit. And then they get to pick up the 2 Dragon Storms since a dragon entered. Opponents may be trying to figure out how to split up the damage. Well, I guess they could still cast another spell afterwards, but they don't. So now I could play the case, deal with a familiar, but just attacking should do it. Alright, sweet. On to the next one. Okay, we're on the draw. This hand doesn't feature many new cards from Dragonstorm, but it's definitely functional. Facing turn 1 elves. And there's another demolition. So turn 1, we're going to want a Siren, and then next turn I can play Inspector plus Demolition. Maybe playing a Darker Waste into Mountain made more sense if that's our sequence, so I don't take damage from my pain land for no reason. Alright, another Inspector. So, stick to the plan. So our opponent might be on an elf deck. We still need to find some payoffs for all these tokens. As yeah, our opponent plays a Visionary. They already have the city, which can also eventually make more mana. For now, just a nesting bot. So I can play the bots and then Demolition twice. So then it's just a matter of time until we find something to make use of all these tokens. And next turn we can certainly consider an all-out attack, even if we lose some tokens in the process. Would love a Warleader's Call or a Case. Even our Pump Spell could be good enough. Alright, it's going to be a Voice of Victory. So, if I attack all out, opponent blocks 3 tokens, takes 6, 7, 8, 9, falls to 9. Yeah, that might be good enough. Although next turn we could just be dead to a Craterhoof Behemoth if they have it. Yeah, if they have a Craterhoof, they're probably gonna block extra conservatively. So maybe they don't. Or they have to consider the Pump Spell, which currently would give +12/+12. So yeah, given that they played it safe, they might have a Craterhoof to kill me here. Yep. GG's. So yeah, didn't really have the payoff we needed to make use of all the 1/1s. On to the next one. Alright, we're on the draw with a promising hand. Turn 1, I guess we'll play Siren, since that might be a bottleneck. And then could go with a Voice. Found another removal spell. So the upside of double 1-drop is that it's harder for the opponent to disrupt a solved case compared to Voice just getting taken out by a removal spell. Voice also doesn't help solve the case since it's only 2 creatures attacking. So I think this is a double 1-drop situation. Can also start considering exploring with a map to hit our land drops. But for now, we'll get the 3 creatures out there for solving the case. Enduring Innocence will still persist in a way. A good trade since we'll get a 1/1 in return. And we keep drawing removal spells, so might be worth it to explore, try and hit our land drop, and then I guess let's see. Could either go with, if we miss, I can still play Siren, although then I would probably just explore twice, so then I want to keep the white mana available to maybe still play the case afterwards. Alright, and then now solve the case is reasonable, or we could play the Voice first, since we can still attack unopposed right now. Opponent trades. And we'll see if we can start solving some cases. We're pretty happy if our opponent just keeps playing 1 creature turn after turn. The doll can draw and discard. Discarding a land. And an Overlord. So there might be a reanimation angle here. I see. The ceremony makes sense. So that's what they're trying to set up. Okay, so just gotta put the pedal to the metal now that we know what our opponent's trying to do. Play the case. And then Demolition our artifact. And smash. Our opponent probably hasn't found the ceremony yet. Can also imp the Overlord for single black if you have this in play. The Walker turns into draw card, make a zombie for free. And Chupacabra can be an efficient removal spell. Okay. Play another case. And this is 10 damage coming across. Maybe should have kept white available for nesting bot in case there is some sort of sweeper. So we'll still be left with a token afterwards. We are at max speed as well. But our opponent scoops it up. On to the next one. Okay, we're on the play. We have a functional hand. Siren into Rush, make 2 tokens, into War Leader's Call. Definitely not our best opening hand we can have. Still leaning towards making the tokens as opposed to maybe Inspector and go exploring. Opponent on a Jeskai double spell deck of sorts. Ooh, and the case is pretty useful. So could solve the case right now. Yeah, that might be worth it over playing a War Leader's Call. Or we can keep the case to maybe answer something like a Sheltered by Ghosts if they're running it. Even though that's gonna need an extra land. Yeah, maybe we'll wait. For now, hit for 6. And wait for maybe a juicier target. Although the Battle Mouse could maybe enable some of their synergies, such as a 2/3 flying a lifelink, making an extra copy of itself. So for now it's going to be a Steel Cutter into Effigy. Okay. So turning this into a race maybe. the effigy maybe should have attacked since it goes back to hand end of turn. Okay, so in that case, just play another War Leader's Call, I guess. Hang on to a removal. Opponent forced to chump. So now if they do run out of Sheltered by Ghosts, we can pay the ward with a case. It's going to be in Atali's favor. Into a Get Lost, so that can blow up a War Leader's Call. And make a Monk. Alright, so potentially still in the game. But not really in a position to attack, I don't think. So now we should have them with case plus Inspector, could also double case. But Inspector will close it out right now with the extra ping from War Leader's Call. Alright, GG's. On to the next one. Alright, we're on the play. We have a functional hand. Might want to start with Headliner and then turn 2 go with Voice, or we could go Artifact Maker into Demolition, facing the Elf deck once again, potentially. Yeah, I think I still play Voice. And then Headliner can also be used as removal now. As our opponent plays a Visionary into another Llanowar Elves. So yeah, step 1 is probably going to be to attack. And then I don't have to play my land yet. We'll see if they block. Alright, opponent blocks like so, so they kind of force the issue on the Visionary. And then I guess to play our land untapped, we'll go with Inspector. Tokens go away. And our opponent passes with 5 mana untapped. Not sure what this could be. We get to play Siren and then Demolition. Opponent cannot cast spells in my turn, so we'll see here. Blow up the map, keep the clue. Imperial is perfect. And there's a War Leader's Call, that's what we needed. So now we get to attack pretty much unopposed. So yeah, we just needed a little bit of extra interaction compared to last game, and a War Leader's Call was a nice cherry on top. On to the next one. Okay, we're on the play with a promising hand. Siren into Voice into a War Leader's Call is pretty much the perfect start. I'll take a Gleeful Demolition, maybe some removal. There's our removal. And the great thing about playing Voice is that our opponent, even if they have a cut down, they wouldn't be able to cast it in my turn. Unless they want to remove the Siren. So we'll see if we get to play the call here. Opponent maybe a token deck of their own. But yeah, War Leader's Call has to be the move here. Or we could play the case while the Squire is small. But yeah, the tokens entering tapped and attacking doesn't help with the case. So I think I still prefer War Leader's Call now. Just pushes a lot of damage. And then we can maybe play the case next turn, or just keep making more tokens now that we have a War Leader's Call pinging the opponents. The Innocents can maybe gain them some life, but yeah, now we should be in great shape. They still don't have a great block. I guess they could double block if they want to. But yeah, maybe now it's time for the case. Take out Squire. And then I can still play the Headliner. Could also play and sacrifice the Headliner, but may as well get the case going. So yeah, as you'll notice here, even though we eventually have 4 attacking creatures, the moment we're attacking it's only 2, so the case is not solved. But our opponent falls to 1, up to 3, so not quite dead here. But I'll go with the Headliner, put them back to 2. And then now we have removal on the battlefield, ready to be used. And yeah, Solm's not gonna do it. GG's. And attack. Now Frontline Rush could also be used as a pump spell, so it's quite versatile. But the War Leader's Call finally gets to shine. Onto the next one. Okay, we're on the play with a fine hand. Turn 1, we're looking at Siren. Would love to find Gleeful Demolition to go with these artifacts. And we could use some additional interaction perhaps. But looks like we're just making some 1/1 tokens end of turn. And then Narset can be a way to refuel. Ideally we play Narsets and maybe another 1-drop in the same turn. So we get that immediate value. As opposed to tapping out on turn 3, since we're not going to want to discard our hand then. Opponent might have their own Frontline Rush in hand. Yeah, I guess that's fine. Go ahead and attack. Maybe should have played Nesting Bot first. Still a small chance I want to play Narset here. Yeah, you know what? May not line up if they have something like a Get Lost in hand. But could help us attack past larger creatures next turn. And also doesn't get swept up by a temporary lockdown. It's going to be a Steel Cutter, so opponent's more of a flurry type of deck wanting to double spell. And a Burst Lightning. Okay. Find an Inspector. So I could just play 3 1-drops and draw 3 with Narsets, discarding the Rush. Could attack first. If they block, we can also Rush. Pumping my creature, that is. Kind of like the triple 1-drop more. And just attack with Narsets. I'll take action, draw 3, and a War Leader's Call's looking good. Have Headliner as removal. Enduring Innocence. Opponent passes. So yeah, War Leader's Call, attack all out. Seems reasonable to me. And we'll decline. Another steel cutter. And a battle mouse. So they get to make some tokens, draw off innocence. But they can't keep up with the token deck going wide. So play Inspector. Or max speed, pumping the 2 nesting bots. And then I can also sack the headliner here to clear a path. And explore. Attack all out, and then end of turn, Narset would also draw more cards for us. So yeah, glad we got to see a game where Narset got to shine. So we got to see our Jeskai tokens deck in action, and yeah, I'm very happy with all of the new additions from Tarkir Dragonstorm. The 1-drop headliner gives us additional removal while still being a creature and token maker. The frontline rush is a lot more flexible than the reinforcements, and because we no longer have the knight errant, we don't care about increasing our creature count, so just having an instant speed, make 2 tokens with the flexibility of a pump spell is better. And then yeah, Voice of Victory curving into Warleader's Call was perfect. Narset drew us a few extra cards, so all of the additions seem to be impactful, and yeah, that gives this deck an alternate playstyle compared to the previous iterations with Knight Errant, although it's possible that a mix of the two could also work out. But for now, I want to thank you for watching, hope you enjoyed, and as always, have a nice day.